back to Sherburne Public Library's Book Talk. Today we are talking about DVDs or movies that have been released in the last year that we own at the library that you can come in and borrow. So today I think Megan's got a couple. I've got one we're going to review, and I think Megan's going to go first. So go ahead.
Okay, so the first one that I highly recommend is actually called Parasite. And this one won the Academy Award for Best Picture. It's actually the first non-English language film to win Best Picture, so that was interesting. Basically, this movie tells the story of the Kim family. It's a mother, father, son, and daughter, and they are very poor. They live in a sort of like a basement apartment, and they're all working and just barely making ends meet. And then the son's friend actually works for a wealthy family, and he's going to be leaving his job. So he suggests to his friend that he should apply for the job to work for this wealthy family. I think he was a tutor for one of the kids in the wealthy family. And so the son of the Kim's son goes and works for this family, and he actually is able to figure out a way that he can get the rest of his family jobs by sort of getting the other employees of the wealthy family fired, or I think one of them actually had just left. So they end up, all four of them, working for this wealthy family. I think their name is the Park family, or Parks. And basically, I would say this is a really interesting commentary on class, basically. And sort of the title of the movie comes from the idea of, I would say, Parasite, in terms of them sort of feeding off of the wealthier family. But I think you could also look at it the other way, that the wealthy family is sort of in need of the services of this poorer family. They kind of don't do much for themselves, I guess. So it could go either way. And an interesting quote that I saw from Forbes magazine said, "Parasite outlines how the working class are forced into conflict against one another, fighting for scraps, while families like the Parks live a comfortable life, fueled by the labor of the many individuals working beneath them." So I kind of feel like that Parasite title could go either way. But anyway, they sort of end up in a conflict with the former housekeeper, who is also kind of, I guess you could say, feeding off of the wealthier family, and sort of needing them for things. And it does become rather violent towards the end, I would say. I don't want to give too much away, but it's sort of a commentary on class, and the idea that, poverty can be, it can take generations to sort of climb out of poverty, and no matter what you try to do. And it's kind of depressing in that way, but it's also I think it's a really brilliant film, and a really brilliant idea that that you kind of end up with the poor people sort of fighting each other. And yeah, I highly recommend this one. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be about, but it's really good.
I'm interested in that movie. I know because it won the Academy Award, and like you said, it was the first like non-English one to win that. So I was immediately interested just because that's so unique. And there was so much buzz about it. I had no idea what it was about, honestly, but that is really interesting. The whole class thing is interesting, and that vicious cycle of poverty. I think people don't see that. I think sometimes people look at people in poverty as it's their fault somehow that they can't get out of it. And I don't think that necessarily that's usually the case. I know sometimes maybe, but in general, I think the problem is it's a cycle. And when you're poor, you can't afford this, you can't afford that. And that doesn't, so it becomes it's a vicious cycle. It's horrible. Right. So interesting. I like that. I'll have to watch it because I've been meaning to. It's just been in the back of my head on my list, the list you keep in your head. So cool. That's really interesting. Thank you. Um, so I am reviewing a movie called Misbehavior. This is a movie based on a true story set in 1970 in England. And it's about the Miss World contest and a group of women who protested it, who were starting that women's liberation movement in England. They it's interesting. The thing about the movie that's a little, I would say, a negative piece of the movie is there is a lot to it, and there are several storylines. So in the beginning, you're kind of like, it feels kind of, you know, not going together. I mean, I knew it was going to all converge, but because it's got several storylines, it just makes it a little less more confusing. But anyway, you've got Keira Knightley plays the lead character, who is a single mom who is a professor at a university, and she's works with the women's movement that's at the university. Then there's this other group of women who live in a commune who are very feminist, as what we would call them now, and they go around protesting in ways like, you know, spray painting signs and really being disruptive. And so Keira Knightley doesn't really necessarily agree with their tactics, but I think she believes in what they're doing. So eventually they get together and decide that they're going to go to the Miss World pageant, and they're going to disrupt it in the middle of it, basically. So the other storyline, of course, is the pageant itself and some of the contestants. So you have, this was also, 1970 apparently was also the year that they crowned the first Black or person of color Miss World. She was from Grenada, and her name was Jennifer Hostin, or Hostin, I don't know how whichever way you pronounce it. So this other storyline is her little journey. I mean, once she gets there with all the other contestants and the racial issue of, her being a person of color, and this has just never happened. And actually, most of the people just didn't even see it coming. They just assumed, of course, she wasn't going to win. Then there's also the issue, there was another South Africa, this was just before apartheid's going on. And South Africa had entered two contestants, a white one and a Black one. And so that was controversial, of course. And what ends up is that the Black Miss, well, they called her, to distinguish between the white and the Black woman, they said South America and America South. So Miss America South, the Black lady, she was first runner up in the contest. So it was a really remarkable year in that sense. And then it's really interesting. Greg Kinnear is in it, and he plays Bob Hope. And Bob Hope was the host of this thing. And actually, he did a pretty good job. I was surprised because I thought if you look at Greg Kinnear, you would never think Bob Hope. No, nobody thinks that. But he actually kind of looked like him. They fixed his nose, so it had that, pointiness kind of that Bob Hope's nose did. And he comes off as a not very likable character, honestly, because they're showing his, what from that time period was kind of normal, unfortunately, but he was very, the way he treated women and talked about women was kind of sexist, he's, and looking at it, for me, a woman growing up in the 70s, I realized that there was a lot of that going on that, at the time was just considered normal. And I didn't think about it a lot. I did as I got older, as the movement moved, and I realized, this is not normal and shouldn't be. But it was just interesting in that sense, because so what you had at the end was the convergence of this racism, sexism, all comes together in one moment because the pageant starts, they're talking, and Bob Hope's on stage and he's saying some, you know, very misogynistic things. And the girls decide that that's the moment, and they stand up and they start protesting. Now they get them out and they arrest them, but and then the pageant goes on, and so then you have the crowning, the shocking moment of the people of color being um, crowned into this. so there's one interesting moment at the very end where Keira Knightley goes into the bathroom and meets up with Jennifer Hostin, the lady who just won. And it was interesting because, of course, from the pageant's contestants' point of view, they are upset because this has been disrupted and this is their thing. And for her, this was a huge moment because she's a person of color who just won the Miss World pageant, which had never happened before. So there's this huge special moment for her, but it's being marred by women who are trying to actually move that movement forward, move the movement forward for women and protest against the pageant itself. So it's a really it's kind of a cool little scene because you finally get to they meet up, and so that's kind of cool. So all of that being said, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was really interesting, and the way it, like I said, the way the racism sexism issue kind of converge, and it's cool. And when at the very end, I thought this was very interesting. During the credits, they would show, for example, Keira Knightley's character. They'd show her, and then she would turn and smile, and then they would show the actual person, the lady who she was really playing. And it was just so cool to do that. And they did that with all of the major female characters. Um, so that was kind of a nice transition. And then throughout the credits, they showed actual pictures of those women back in the 1970. And it was amazing how much those girls looked like them. So they did a good job with that. But that was great. I think it's a great little movie. It was a kind of just the first kind of, women's liberation movement kind of feel to it. So it was very, in that sense, they were very raw and didn't know what they were doing, not very organized, but they definitely wanted to do something because they wanted to make their point. And so, of course, I have to applaud them for, starting something kind of good. so yeah, so I recommend.
Yeah, I had never actually heard of this movie and I didn't hear about this happening, but
Yeah.
it sounds really interesting. I tend to like I watch a lot of movies based on true events, so that sounds interesting. And it's funny, I was noticing that I think you said it's a British movie, and I noticed
Mm-hmm.
that the title has that U, which I thought was funny.
Yes,
So
yes, you're right. Misbehavior. Yes. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, that definitely tells you it's an English movie, I would say. But yeah, I it's great. I didn't know about it either. I was just looking for something to review, and I thought, I'll see what we've got. And I saw that and I thought, well, it sounds cool. I love the whole women's, liberation stuff. That's always interesting to me and personally interesting. So yeah, that's why I chose it. But yeah, I'm glad I did.
yeah.
So you have another movie, I think you were going to talk about.
Yeah. Um, I don't have it with me, but I did watch it recently, and it was Knives Out. Um, this is this is interesting because I know that you know that I've mentioned I love the movie Clue, and I feel like it reminds me of that, but it's also I mean it's not as much, it's not as campy, and it's not as funny, although it is, some parts of it are funny, but there's a lot of stars in this movie. Let me just read. Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson, Toni Collette, and then the patriarch of the family is actually played by Christopher Plummer. There's just a lot of people in this. So basically, Christopher Plummer is playing Harlan, and he's a very rich novelist, and he basically invites his whole family for his 85th birthday. I think he lives in Massachusetts. He has this big mansion. And then he ends up, of course, dead while they're all there. And it's a really sort of a classic whodunit film. And the detective is played by Daniel Craig, and he's brought in to sort of figure out what's going on. And of course, all of the family members are they're kind of all awful in their own way. So you feel like it could literally be any of them. You don't really know where it's going to go. And I don't want to give away, obviously, where it does go, but I think it really reminds me a lot of those classic whodunit films in the big mansion, and everyone's a suspect, and so it's sort of brought into the modern age, and there's definitely some twists that you don't see coming, and I don't want to give away too much, but yeah, it's really good, and it's what did I say? I think it's got like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is crazy. That's like the highest I've ever seen, but it's really good. It was named one of the best films by American Film Institute for the year. So I definitely recommend it. It is some dark humor, but also just a classic murder mystery. It's really good.
It's really cool because I can see where you're getting the relationship like to Clue, how that
Yeah.
kind of relates to that. And it sounds like your old-fashioned Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot type thing where they're yeah, it's a whodunit. It's all, everybody in the family is a suspect, and 10 little Indians kind of feel to it. Sounds like they're all
Yeah.
trapped in a mansion for the weekend, and um I love that though. And I love the cast, like you said, is amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
like everybody in there.
Right.
Yeah, that's another one on my list to watch because it got such good reviews. Like you said, 97 or 98%
Yeah.
on Rotten Tomatoes. That's a that's a good indication that it's a good movie. So nice. Yeah, I love that. I'm not usually a big mystery fan, but I love that kind of stuff. And Clue, I've always loved Clue. I mean,
Yeah.
that's such a fun movie. It's kind of a parody or a take on those kind of movies, but that's what makes it fun. So
Yeah.
cool. Wow. See, we even found some good movies. That's the problem right now with movies, as everybody knows. Movie sets have not been able to produce their movies because of the COVID outbreak. So their movies are kind of at a standstill, or they're starting to come back, I think now, but there was nobody was able to produce movies, so there's not many movies coming out right now. And I think a lot of people have resorted to Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney and Apple and all of those other ones for those shows that are there. Um, but we do have a lot of movies at the library, including the ones we just talked about. Um, so I hope you will come in and join us and pick out some more movies. We also tend to carry, this is just a note to take note of. We carry a lot of series, TV series videos. And so if you're somebody who either doesn't have the cable or that specific service, it's a good way to watch some really actually quality and entertainment, because TV has a lot of really good series on. So come in and choose some movies or some DVDs and have some fun. So thank you for coming to our book talk this week at DVD Talk. And we'll see you next week. What are we doing next week? I forgot again.
I think it's Black authors.
Yes, because Black History Month is February, and I believe we'll be doing books by Black authors. It should be very interesting. There's a lot of good ones. So join us next week, and we will see you